Here is the Crescendo Music Education podcast, episode number 32. This podcast is being recorded on the lands of the Turrbal people. I acknowledge them as the traditional owners of the land and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. They were the first music makers on this land. In this episode, you're going to get to meet Dan Walker, composer, conductor, performer extraordinaire. You'll hear a little about what he does. You'll hear why I'm a bit of a Dan fan. And I hope you really enjoy part one of my chat with Dan Walker. Hello, Dan Walker. Thank you and welcome to the Crescendo Music Education podcast. Yay!
Thank you, Deb. Lovely to see you again.
Yes, it's been too long with COVID and living in different parts of Australia. And
I know. Yeah, it's been really ordinary. I mean, I think it's hit everyone really hard, but I think, for us in the choral world, we've really sort of borne the brunt of it. And we're only sort of just, I think, coming out of the woods. I've found with the choirs that I'm running here in Canberra, particularly, some of the ones that are of an older demographic, they're still very hesitant, to sort of get back together in the same kind of way and with the same level of vigor that they were pre-COVID, and that's making life quite difficult. But we just soldier on.
Yes, and we'll get there. We will come out the other end. I feel like we have already to a certain degree, but, so that's great. Well, I'm going to start by reading your short bio. And I know when I was looking at your bios online, it certainly really is in reality a lot longer than this. But this is your short bio, and this is for people who haven't had the honour of meeting you yet, Dan. Okay, here we go. Canberra composer, conductor and performer Dan Walker is one of Australia's most in-demand choral specialists. He has written music for the Sydney Symphony Orchestra, Queensland Symphony Orchestra, Australian Chamber Orchestra, Gondwana Choirs and Halcyon. As a performer, Dan is a member of the Clarion vocal quartet. Oh, I don't know about that. Sydney-based Cantillation and Pinchgut Opera. He is a guest performer with the Song Company and was a founding member of early music ensemble. It's the Parsons. How do you say it? Oh, that is Affayre. The Parsons Affayre.
Yeah, it's Affayre. It's just ye oldie writing of Affayre.
Ye oldie way of saying Affayre. Okay. A keenly sought after conductor, Dan has appeared as chorus master for the Sydney and Melbourne Symphony choruses and is now music director of the Canberra Choral Society, Oriana Chamber Choir, Luminescence Chamber Singers. Oh, that sounds quite beautiful. That's a lovely name. And the Canberra Community Chorale. Okay, so it just sounds like you're keeping busy as usual, Dan. And before we go, I'll actually tell everybody where I first met you, because that's an interesting story. Where I first met you, you were just a little tacker.
I would have been a spring chicken.
Yeah, you were just a spring chicken. Yeah, I mean, you still are, obviously. But listening...
Well, I mean, it's all relative, right?
Relative, yeah. Listening to that brief bio, would there be anything you want to add that's not in there?
That pretty much covers it. I am singing more regularly with the Song Company. So the Song Company is a Sydney-based ensemble that is sort of going through a little bit of restructure at the moment. And as a result, I am looking at being one of the sort of core 6 singers of that group. Luminescence Chamber Singers is a 5-voice group that is based here in Canberra. And I'm not artistic director of that choir. I am just a singer. Well, just a singer, but that is very much kind of run in a slightly sort of democratic process whereby, all of the singers kind of bring something to the table. We don't really have a conductor per se, but everyone sort of brings their own level of expertise to that particular group. And it's fabulous. We've got plenty of things happening here in Canberra, which is great. But it is nice to be sort of close-ish to Sydney so that I can travel to do the Song Company things. And of course, with Pinchgut Opera, which is the Baroque opera company that is based out of Sydney and does several productions a year. So yeah, fingers in lots of different pies.
Lots of different pies. Well, I know this this podcast won't come out for actually several months because I I work a lot ahead of time, working full time at school. I've just got to do all the work in holidays and schedule it out. But at the time of recording, I am one day away from coming to Canberra myself.
Oh, you're coming for the Kodo conference?
I sure am. Yes.
Right. Well, Oriana is singing on Wednesday night in that gala concert at Girls Grammar, so I will see you there.
Oh, well, I'll see you. Let's make sure we wave to each other there at least.
Yeah,
yes. I've packed my warm clothes because like up here it's virtually turned into summer already. So what's the weather like?
Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, it's a bit grey, but it's certainly warmed up. We had a bit of a miserable winter. Canberra doesn't deal with the rain very well, and we've had a lot of it. And so it's a little bit sodden around the place, but things are warming up. It's Floriade at the moment, so there's lots of
yes.
people driving around not knowing where they're going and kind of on these interminable roundabout loops while they find their way.
Yes,
but it's
yes.
great.
Your roads are very, they take a bit of getting used to when you first come into ACT.
They do. And I think the problem with the arterial roads is they all look the same. So you're on one and you're not really sure which one it is. And they're often hard to get off. But anyway, look, I'm loving it. It's a really great place, and the balance of being able to get outdoors and do nice things in the beautiful country that we have here is a real pleasure and one of the perks. So yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. Do you consider yourself, this is just a random question that popped in my head, do you consider yourself more a performer or a composer?
Ooh. Look, I think at heart I'm a composer. I certainly studied, that's what I studied as part of my tertiary education. I studied composition at the Queensland Con. And while the busyness of that particular arm of my portfolio tends to kind of wax and wane, while the performing side of things tends to be a little bit more regular, I think at heart, it's the thing that I enjoy the most. I really like creating new music. I love creating music for young people. And I really love that process of them kind of unpacking and singing that sort of stuff for the first time. So that's probably the thing that sparks me the most joy. I do really enjoy performing, but it also has its ups and downs, and yeah. I mean, I'm doing probably just as much conducting as both of those things now too. But again, it is one of those things that often kind of pays the bills as much as anything else. That being said, there are lots and lots of choirs in Canberra, so there are lots of conducting opportunities. But I think, well and truly at heart, I am definitely a composer. Oh,
that's lovely. Well, I'm going to tell everybody about when I first met you, whether you remember or not. I was at a classroom teaching at Sandgate State School.
I do remember.
Come back to you.
Oh, yes.
So we're talking I was at Sandgate State School from 2000 to 2010. Like I was there for a long time. So it was in there somewhere, and it was part.
It was in 2000, would have been 2001. And goodness. That was my last year in Brisbane, and I was living there, and we were there as part of the Queensland Music Festival.
Yes.
So Steve and Nick and I had written this piece of music that involved all of these amazing local primary school choirs, and we were doing the rounds. And so yes, I do remember that was
So I had this tiny little music room, like the only lower floor room in all of the. So it's like, those of you who know Queensland State School buildings, it's the old wooden 2-story buildings, and I had a room underneath the buildings, and it was just a little dungeon like. I made it as fun as it could be, and then I had Stephen Leake and Dan Walker come and arrive and work with my choir in this little room in a state school, though we sounded all right. It was only the beginning of my journey there. We ended up with really good choirs, but that was the beginning of the journey. But yeah, we sang in that great the creek. It was part of the festival of that.
The one in behind Chermside.
That waterway. God, what's it called?
Yeah. Oh, I can't remember.
Oh,
that's not my neck of the woods anymore.
No, I know. It's mine, and I can't remember it. Please, everybody, forgive me for not remembering the name. But anyway, that's when we came in, and I heard your voice. There's more to this story, right? And I heard you singing with the kids, of course, and Stephen Leake, you know, of course. Having Stephen Leake in my room is like, oh, a famous person. And I was just so taken with your voice. And I went, oh, hey, I've actually got this little project. I need a male voice to do a recording for me. And you did. And I remember working with you. It was so good. And that still is around. People can purchase it on my website. I'm actually doing something exciting with it at the moment, but that's another story. And I remember quite vividly, you came in, it was just singing a couple of, 8-beat songs. Right. Yep. And I remember saying, we were having this chat and I said, could you sort of relax a little more? Because it sounded a little proper. You just went, sure. And it was just perfect. I just remember thinking then, that's it. I'm a Dan fan. And I've been a Dan fan ever since.
No, that was a long time ago. Those sort of projects do stick with you, I think. They certainly stick with me because they are often so different from the day-to-day that I do. And regardless of how, simple the music is or, kind of not even out of my comfort zone, but out of the day-to-day it is, I really love those opportunities because that you are tapping into an audience and a whole new generation, and it's an opportunity to kind of inspire the next next set of musicians. So that's it's a pleasure.
I love it. Okay, so we'll get back on track because I sort of have some guiding questions in there. All right, what would you consider a highlight or highlights of your journey as a conductor, composer, performer, music educator, everything? There's so many. You work with so many fabulous groups and stuff, don't you?
Yeah, and I've been doing it for a long time. I sort of, I was having a little bit of an existential crisis through COVID because like all musicians, we were just really struggling to make ends meet and felt at every turn that we had to justify our existence. And I found that really hard. And I was thinking, if I was in any other job, if I was in Canberra working in the public service for 20 years, I'd be up in the upper echelons of management, regardless of how good or how not good I was at the job, really. And I was sort of thinking, I have been doing this as a professional for more than 20 years. And it's really hard. You have to have a diverse portfolio. You have to be conducting and singing and composing and, doing all the other bits and pieces just to, eke out a living. It's sort of indicative of lots of things. It's indicative of where, classical music and music education sits in our cultural landscape. But I have had some really fantastic opportunities. I've done some amazing projects. One of the highlights, while probably not necessarily, something that kind of pushed my career in any one direction, but I was quite involved in the Rugby World Cup when it was here in 2003. I did all the arrangements of the anthems of the 20 different countries that were involved in that year's World Cup, and then ended up singing for one of the countries, and it wasn't Australia, and there was a bit of a backstory to that as well. But that was basically it was like an amazing 2-month holiday where we got put up in all these amazing hotels around Australia and got amazing seats to all of these rugby games, and it was just fabulous. And I also made some really fantastic lifelong friends doing that. Musicians, singers from different countries that were at similar stages in their careers, some of whom have gone on to be absolute superstars. And, I'm still in touch with them. So that was certainly one of those really fabulous moments that I look back on really fondly. I think probably one of the most important moments would be when I was quite young, and I started singing with the Australian Voices, and that was when I was living in Brisbane. And Graham Morton and Stephen Leake Graham Morton was the conductor at the time. Stephen Leake was working as sort of composer in residence, and then he took over the conducting reins not long after I started. But the opportunities that I was presented with in singing that choir, which involved everything from overseas tours, singing almost exclusively Australian repertoire, having the opportunity to do conducting workshops, having the opportunity to write music for that group, making connections with other music organisations, choirs that were also doing predominantly Australian repertoire, people like Gondwana Choirs with Lynn Williams, and Woden Valley with Alpha Gregory here in Canberra. That really kind of changed the direction of where I thought I wanted to go as a musician. I got into composing thinking that I wanted to be a film music composer, wanted to be the next John Williams, and my path diverged quite quickly after not very long at the con. And that was basically because I had these opportunities, and I was very quickly made aware of this incredible community, this incredible choral community that exists in this country, with a amazing commissioning culture, which doesn't really exist in any other country in the world, as far as I
doesn't it?
can tell. Not really. I mean,
oh no, you've frozen. Oh no. Please.
Organisations from other countries in new music on a regular basis, but in terms of schools commissioning new music, schools commissioning composers to write new school songs for them, primary schools in low socio-economic areas in Western Sydney wanting to have a new song written just for them, and will spend a significant amount of money in terms of their budget that they've got for music. To have someone come in and write something is really extraordinary. And as a result, we have this incredible wealth of music that's written for amateur singers. And it's really unlike, it's not something that we really see in the UK. It's not really something that we see en masse, in the US. You have to sort of go to places like Finland, where choral music is such an integral part of growing up, that you see anything that's even remotely similar. So I feel very lucky to be a part of that.
Well, it's good to hear that side, because the negative side of that coin, from my understanding of being just like on the edges of your world, really. I mean, I'm like you, just the choral community in Australia is just amazing. And to just be vaguely in the vicinity of that world is wonderful. But the negative side of that coin is it's fairly difficult in Australia to make a living as a composer, because you get nowhere near the financial rewards for being a successful choral composer that you would in, say, America. If you're being a fairly successful choral composer, you get quite a lot. I know the systems are different, but with our licensing and our various bits and pieces, there's a lot of money that I believe composers are missing out on that they really should be paid for. So that's the negative side of the coin. The positive side, and you can say something about that if you want, but I love that you talked about that positive side, which is the community and the fact that we do commission.
Yeah. Look, I totally agree with you. And for those viewers at home that don't quite get what we're speaking about in terms of money that is potentially owed to composers, we're sort of talking about this mechanical licensing system that AMCOS, which is the Australian, I can't even remember what it stands for, music owners, music copyright something. Anyway, someone can chime in and fix it. But anyway, there is a system whereby schools pay a license to reproduce music at a ratio of 1 to 5. So for every single copy of music that they buy, they can copy 5 times. And in no other universe would that be a thing that is okay. You know, imagine buying one textbook and then photocopying that textbook 5 times and giving it out to the other kids. Like, it's just not a thing. The most mind-boggling thing for me is that really music isn't expensive. You know, you can buy a single piece of music for $2.50. So, you know, it's not an expensive venture. I think the way that AMCOS and APRA try to offset that is they basically, all of the money is put together in a pool, and then that is distributed to a cross-section of composers, and it's a bit of a lottery. It's gotten far fairer now than it used to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I have heard composers speak not kindly of that system. And by the way, I Googled it while you were talking. The Australasian Mechanical Copyright Owners Society. There
you go. Yeah, that's the one. Anyway, and look, you know, if you're lucky enough to receive royalties from that, it's great. You know, it can be, you know, quite a good amount of remuneration, but there are many composers that just don't see a cent, and that makes it really, really difficult. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what the answer is to that. I mean, thankfully in this country, you know, music teachers are generally pretty honest, and the number of illegal copies that are kind of, you know, floating around in the system are pretty minimal. But it is a challenge. It certainly is a challenge for composers, and you know, in the scheme of things, we're not a big country. You know, we've only got 22 or so million people, and you don't have the, you know, the number of schools, the sheer number of schools with choirs that you do in somewhere like the States, and that itself is its own scene that is very difficult to break into as a composer. You know, writing, or what I think is very accessible choral music. I've only really had a limited success in getting that into the States, but that's just, you know, one of the things. I think there are plenty of fantastic composers over there that are struggling as well. So
yes, well,
it's certainly not unique to us.
This podcast might introduce some of your music to some listeners over there, and they might go, "Hey, I want to buy me some of that."
It's all very accessible. Yes, there's plenty there. That reminds me, I do need to update my website, so maybe don't go there quite yet. But
you've got a couple of months before this comes out. So
good, yeah.
You get in, update your website. And while we're on your compositions, there's 2 questions I want to ask. I want to ask you about some of your favourite compositions, your ones you love the best and ones that singers have loved the best.
Pieces of my own?
Yes, I'm talking about you. This is time. Let's have a little blow Dan Walker's trumpet time.
I don't. Yeah, I do struggle to blow my own trumpet, I must admit.
Well, can I start? I want to do it first. Let me do it first. I'm going to tell you that I have started doing one of yours with my little grade 1 and 2 choir, and it's really one of my favourites. Do you know what I'm going to say?
No.
You have done it up here at a crescendo workshop, I think, too. The Hour I Like the Best.
Oh, yes. That's a cute one.
Oh, but it's better than cute. It's beautiful. It is just, it's unison. The accompaniment just right. It's not as simple as it appears at first, like where you pop the dots. You know, the rhythm at the kangaroos is different to the heron rhythm. You know, I love that it's so uniquely Australian. Do you know one of the reasons I love it? And then I will shut up for a little while and let you talk. One of the reasons I love it is it's actually the hour I like the best too. Like in real life.
Yeah.
It's the hour I like the best. It's when you can have a little breath, the sun is going down, the birds are roosting. It's just, I don't know, it's a magic piece.
Time. Thank you.
So anyone out there who wants a unison piece, and these singers are like 5, 6, 7-year-olds, you could do it a bit older, obviously, but it just, hearing those little voices singing that beautiful unison phrase, like, Anyway, so the hour I like the best. That's my first recommendation. Now it's your turn, Dan.
Look, I will add to that, I mean, I've written a lot of music for treble voices, and I am quite deliberate about how I approach that. And I think each of the pieces, particularly the unison and simple two-part things that I've written, I do really kind of think quite carefully about what it is that I'm trying to get the choristers to do. And in that piece, it's just to sing a supported line, to sing a beautiful line, to really focus on the vowels, to think about how the colours that are spoken about in the song can be reflected in the way that they sing, so that it's not, they're not kind of singing on autopilot and, taking breaths in all the spots they're not supposed to. So there is that kind of sense of taking ownership of that particular line, because they don't sing themselves. There's plenty of simple pieces in unison that kind of sing themselves, and this one doesn't. And I think as a result, it has kind of had legs. It's been performed quite a lot, and I think one of the other things that is there's a stigma around, in terms of young treble voice repertoire, is that it has to be really simple, and it doesn't have to be really simple. Kids are actually very good at doing syncopation. Kids are very good at remembering tricky little rhythms, as long as you're not kind of changing those rhythms every time. If you've got a similar kind of pattern, it makes it difficult to differentiate. But in terms of actually doing it, I found that 5 and 6 year old kids have a lot easier job of doing that than singers that have been singing in choral societies for 50 years, and can sing Beethoven inside out and back to front, but can't sing in 7/8.
Yes.
So
yes.
It's one of those things. Yeah.
No, I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I must admit the ones, the pieces that I'm probably the most happy with are some of the simplest pieces that I've written. I've written some really big pieces for adult choirs, some really complicated pieces that have had some great performances, but there's nothing quite like. So, for example, 3 days ago, I was down in Adelaide, and I was attending one of the performances of the Adelaide Primary Schools Music Festival. And this is an initiative that's been going for 130 years. And every single primary school child it was up to year 7, but it's now 4 to 6, because the year 7s are now in high school in South Australia. Every single one of those kids that is in the public school system sings in these mass choir events at the Festival Theatre in Adelaide. So they've had 10 concerts, well, 9, because they had to cancel one for the public holiday that we've just had for the Queen's passing. And there's 450 kids on stage, and they commission new works for every one of these festivals. And so just before COVID hit, I was commissioned to write a set of 4 pieces for these kids. And that was a challenge in itself, because you've got some very extraordinarily talented kids, and then you've got some kids that are in regional areas that just do not have music. It just is not a part of their curriculum. But the idea is that it is all about inclusivity, and it's all about giving these kids, whether they're from Norwood in South Australia to who knows, somewhere in the middle of nowhere, the same opportunities. And to hear a piece of music being sung by 450 kids on stage, rough around the edges and all, is just the most extraordinary thing. And then to hear them singing that in the hallways outside of rehearsal or outside of concert, that's when you've got them. Yeah. And you just can't beat it.
That's quite extraordinary. Yes. Oh, you've frozen again.
Pieces that are probably the most lasting.
Okay. You just froze for a little bit there. I'll just have to...
I lost you too.
Yeah. So we'll just get my lovely sound person to cut that little bit out. We'll just go back a little bit. Okay. Great. That's amazing. So every child, not every child in a choir, every child in grade 4, 5, or 6. Every
child in year 4, 5, and 6.
Yes. Yep. I love it. South Australia is now, and they're working on their 10-year plan. And have you heard about Together Sing?
Nope.
Oh, goodness, Dan. I will send you an email, okay? And by the time this comes out, our first Together Sing event will have been held, but it's quite extraordinary. So it's basically connecting singing together with well-being, and you can sign up for nothing, download the song resource materials, see the videos. If you think along the lines of Music Count Us In, except basically, coordinated by Deb Bryden and I had this idea a year ago to get it happening, and under the umbrella of Kodai Queensland, and we have lots of partners hop on board to make it all possible. And we've got, what are we up to? I'm going to misquote, 350 teachers / conductors signed up, with over 120,000 singers so far in every state and territory in Australia, and some from overseas. And it's still growing. We're getting registrations every day. So I must get you to have a look. So we had Slade Gibson, a rock guitarist that I know, wrote the piece. And then we had fun like editing it with him. And then Will Brown wrote the piano arrangement for us, and he tweaked it slightly. And it's just a pretty fabulous, everybody get in and sing. So I will email that to you. It's going to be an annual event.
Great.
Together Sing. So we've got to get you on board with that one. And anyone listening, you can still sign up and get it even after the event. You can still get it. We just want it to be sung. So get in there, sign up, download all the materials.
It sounds like an amazing initiative. I think one of the things that became very evident for people that were sort of taking their choral singing for granted pre-COVID was how important it is for their mental health, and how much not being able to sing affected them. And it's whether it's a creative outlet, or whether it's the socialization element, or whether it's the personal challenge of learning repertoire, whatever it was. It was really affecting people. And I think that's why everyone was working so hard at trying to find ways to facilitate that process, over Zoom or socially distanced or whatever it was. Some of those things didn't really work. I never had success with Zoom rehearsals, but, it wasn't for my benefit. It was really for the chorus's benefit. And so, I knew that through that period, we weren't going to necessarily be kind of breaking any new ground in terms of the choir's development and how they were going to sort of sound as an ensemble post-COVID. But in terms of the choristers' well-being, it was absolutely invaluable. So I think what you're doing is fabulous.
Thank you. Oh, we're going to keep trying. We're going to keep trying.
Yeah.
And
great.
We'll have to have a chat to you about a few other things that's happening around the place. All right. Now, is it easy for you to talk about your composition process, or is that something that is very amorphous, like it changes all the time, and do you have a usual process or not?
Look, I would love to say that it's amorphous and a bit, shrouded in mystery, because I think composers kind of have that, sense of enigma about them. But I think that is absolutely not true. I very much have a process, and when I was busy, it almost got to the point of it being a bit formulaic, and I sort of had to just step back a little bit and go, okay, maybe this children's choir doesn't want, a unison melody, and then a melody in canon, and then the kind of dance special. So
now I'm going to have to analyze all your pieces, work out what a dance special is.
So it is a little bit more different from piece to piece now, and I think that's partly in my approach. I'm really sort of wanting to kind of tailor pieces for different groups. More specifically, and so I am sort of talking a bit more with the the conductors of those groups to see what they want to get out of the piece, and I'm trying to kind of create a product that they're really, really happy with, not just something that they can sing once and then sort of go, okay, well, that was nice, but we probably won't do it very often anymore. if I'm writing the text, which I often do, that very much dictates how the process is going to go. I often write the text first, and then after that, I'll write the musical material that goes around that. But I can sort of tweak both sides of that as I go. Just recently, I wrote a piece for Luminescence, the quintet that I sing with, as part of a program entitled Drawing Breath, which by the time you watch this podcast, it will well and truly have been premiered. And it's a total departure. I wanted to try doing things a little bit different. There's some sort of effects that we associate with the inhalation and exhalation of breath. There's bits and pieces in different languages that I've never worked with before, so Nepali and Arabic and Mandarin Chinese. And I just wanted to sort of push myself out of my comfort zone. And so having, fewer commissions is not necessarily the worst thing in the world, because it actually gives you time to think about each one of those a little bit more. So yeah, I definitely have a process, but I'm trying to kind of, mix it up a little bit these days.
Oh, good. Do you think you could tell us about a person or people who've been really influential in your life, professional or personal?
Yeah, well, I mean, the first person that springs to mind, and we've spoken about him today already, is Stephen Leake. And I had heard of Stephen when I was studying music. So I went to school at Brisbane Grammar. Brisbane Grammar has an incredible music program, and it had an incredible choral program. I mean, it still does, but it had a really fabulous choral program when I was there. And I was introduced to the music of Stephen Leake. I would have been in about grade 9 or so. And I was blown away. I'd heard nothing like it. It kind of, we sort of look back at the music of Stephen and of early Paul Stanhope and Nigel Butterley and Ross Edwards as kind of being landscape composers, and that didn't really mean anything to me until I heard Stephen's music. But it is canned landscape. He creates these amazing soundscapes, often with aleatoric music in boxes where each chorister is kind of asked to make their own creative decisions, and we get these really extraordinary performances where no one performance is the same as another one. And I, in year 10, was on a composers camp where Stephen was the composer in residence, and so I got to meet him and to work with him, and it's been a lifelong friendship. He was living in Canberra until quite recently. He's just recently moved down to Launceston, but his music has been extremely influential on a lot of composers, particularly of my generation. And I certainly wouldn't be doing, music. I certainly wouldn't be doing, focusing on choral music. So I am, every.
All right, you just had another little freeze. I'm going to have to.
Did I?
4:23. I'm just writing it down in my time so I can. Yep. We'll see if we can find it. Cool. Okay. So Stephen Leake. Right. Anybody else? Yeah, now there must be. I know there's a lot of people. Anyone else you'd like to single out?
I'm just sort of thinking if there's anyone really recently. Look, probably the other person, for different reasons, actually, is Roland Peelman. And Roland Peelman was the director of the Song Company for many, many years, and now sort of spends his time halfway between Sydney and Canberra, as he's the artistic director of the Canberra International Music Festival. But he's just he has so much energy and so much knowledge in so many different fields. It's really extraordinary for someone that isn't a singer. And if you've ever heard him sing, you will very quickly ascertain that he's really not a singer. But one of the great things that I learned from Roland is that it's not the conductor's job to tell the singers how to sing all the time. It is about kind of taking these instruments and making them work in an ensemble. And so the song company model, when I started singing with them, was that there were 6 full-time singers, and each of those singers had very unique voices, obviously both in where they were in their range, but also in terms of their timbre. And Roland never told them how to sing. He never said that it needed to be this colour or they needed to sing it this way. It was about mixing these colours to create something that was really, really beautiful. And every time I work with him, I'm absolutely inspired, which is, I think, something incredibly important, for all choristers and for all, professional musicians. They need to have their own, enthusiasm levels and inspiration levels topped up, and to have someone that they can work with, or, able to go to fabulous concerts or whatever it might be. That process is invaluable. Otherwise you start getting a little bit jaded and, I don't know, stagnant. And that's something that I'm very conscious of avoiding. So Roland, is a fabulous fellow and larger than life. So if you ever get the opportunity to meet him and to work with him, highly recommend it.
Oh, great. He does sound very interesting. So for what are you most grateful?
Oh, look, this sounds really twee, but I'm probably most grateful to my mum. She was the one that really pushed me to pursue music at a younger age, and at a time when I would much rather be kicking a football around than doing piano practice. But she insisted that I do my piano practice. And she also saw, so I went to a different school in my first year of high school in Brisbane from the rest of my high school years. And Mum saw that I was languishing in a lot of respects musically in this school and did something about it. And it was really difficult financially for her at the time. But I know that if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be doing music. And I'm forever grateful to have those opportunities, and to have had someone that could see the potential that was there, even if it meant dragging me kicking and screaming to piano lessons, when I was a bit younger. So, thanks, Mum.
Oh, that's wonderful. No, that's not twee. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. But it does, I know that this is my personal little bent as well, but it does tell you how important it is to have music in our schools.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
In all schools.
Yeah. Look, I mean, we're sort of preaching pun, but, to have that as part of the curriculum, it's not expensive. It's in the scheme of things, it's really not expensive. And the difference that it makes on so many levels, not just creating we're not trying to create a huge glut of professional musicians. That's not what we're trying to do. It's music at a younger age isn't about creating professionals. It's about, having a balanced education and well-being, and the ability to work with others, and the ability to listen, and the ability to have goals, and all of these things that so often in other academic fields there's so much pressure put on those individual elements that the kids feel so much anxiety around them. And in a choral context, it happens almost without them knowing it. And I didn't sing until I started high school. My primary school didn't have a choral program at all. And I went to primary school in Brisbane. But I still have really good friends that I sang with, in high school. And I strongly believe, it does affect you in so many other ways. You don't need to go on and be a professional musician, but you're absolutely right. It's crucial.
Yes, I agree. Now, would you like to give our listeners a couple of little nuggets of fabulous? A couple of little thoughts, advice, tips, tricks, repertoire, anything you like that you think that people listening who work with choirs or in music classrooms could take away?
Look, I mean, one of them is, and this is sort of based on a lot of experience that I've had working with different school choirs. You don't, so this is for music teachers that aren't necessarily choral specialists.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to resort to singing bad music in your choir. There is so much good music that is specifically written for you, that doesn't have difficult piano parts, has backing tracks that are, not pop music, that doesn't have difficult choir parts that are easily unpackable for a music teacher that really doesn't have a huge amount of experience. And the hard thing, I think, for us is to make that music accessible to everybody and to make them realize that this stuff is out there, and the kids will enjoy it. The kids will start becoming aware of, composers writing music for them. You don't have to sing Ariana Grande in choir. So that's one thing. And I pride myself on kind of adding to that choral canon, because I do absolutely love writing music for very young people. It's so rewarding. So that would be one thing. The other one that I would touch on is, and again, it has a lot to do with working with amateur singers and not just necessarily just young singers, but also adult singers as well. This whole idea that people can't sing and that I can't hold a tune or I'm tone deaf. I strongly, strongly believe that is bupkis. I think everybody can pitch match. If I sing a note and you sing it back to me, that is, using your ear and actually making a musical choice to sing that note. And I think so often choral conductors feel like it's too hard basket. And if they've got an unauditioned choir and they've got that one person that can't sing in tune, they'll bury them in the back corner so that they're kind of, as out of the way and as, unobtrusive as possible. And the complete opposite should happen. They should be right smack in the middle with great singers around them, because it's more often than not, just them being aware of what they should be singing, and also just the physicality of making a tone rather than speaking. Australians are very, very lazy when we speak. We all speak very low in our voices. I'm totally, I speak very low in my voice. And if I was a good tenor, I should be speaking much, much higher. But I think it's just getting them aware that you need to use these muscles to sing. You need to breathe properly. And then, with a little bit of work, they can do that. And I feel really sad for people that come up to me after concerts and go, oh, look, I'd love to sing in a choir, but I just can't hold a tune. It's like, well, come to my choir.
Yep, go to it. I could not agree more. It's just everybody should sing. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, good.
It's so good for you. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, if a great, not analogy, but a really great story is that, the singing revolution that happened in the Baltic countries, particularly in Estonia, when they separated from the Soviet Union. Do a bit of Googling about the singing revolution, and it's absolutely amazing. It's literally the power of the human voice, and this solidarity within Estonians, the might of the Soviet Union. But have a look at that story. It's absolutely amazing. Yeah, and it's just one of those things. It unites us. And I would love for the powers that be in this country to realize how important it is. Mm-hmm. Not just singing, but music across the board. It's so important. And I mean, the great thing about singing is it doesn't cost anything.
Yeah, I know.
You don't have to buy a $5,000 instrument. You've got your own instrument. You can't lose it. You can't, come to rehearsal and go, oh, I can't get the head of my flute out of the rest of the, your instrument works.
Yes.
And so, I just think there's no excuse for us not to be doing it, everywhere.
I agree. And I I'm certainly doing my bit and rallying as many people as I can to do their bit to convince the power makers to just do it. Just do it. Give music to every child in Australia. We just have to do it. So that actually leads, talk about a segue, leads beautifully into, at this time when music education, we have to fight for our programs in our schools, what advice would you give to us around advocacy? And I have a feeling part of your advice is going to be sing and get out there and sing for people to hear you. What advice would you give to us?
Look, I think one of the difficult things is trying to kind of demystify and de-stratify, if you like, classical music in this country. When people think about classical music and they think about, going to the orchestra or going to the ballet or, whatever it is, they think that that is something that rich people do. And so I feel like in a lot of people's mind, there is a very big chasm between the music that we hear on, the pop radio station and the music that we hear on ABC Classic FM. And making that music accessible for a wider variety of people is going to be, I think, what saves us. I think this is a dilemma that kind of faces everybody. You're looking at big organizations like Sydney Symphony really struggling with ticket sales. We are looking at, my choirs here in Canberra, where the numbers are kind of dwindling because the choristers are just aging. And how do we get young people involved? How do we get people interested in, in this music? And it's a question, I think, that everyone is asking everyone else, and I don't think anyone's really got the answer. But I think accessibility and making it less of a rich person's pastime is going to be really crucial. And I think part of that also is we need to have educated practitioners in far more schools. It doesn't take a lot of work. It just is a self-confidence thing as much as anything. And for us as choral specialists, showing these people that you absolutely have the skills to run a choir at your school. It's not about conducting technique. It's not about having an amazing voice. It's just about inspiring kids and sharing your inspiration with them so that it triggers their imagination. It's our job to make that happen. At a grassroots level, which is a challenge.
I so agree, of course, and I think that's making that music more accessible is an interesting way to view that. And I couldn't agree more about, like, everybody has, so many people have those skills to get that started. But the other side of the coin, there's been a few coins in this podcast, hasn't there? The other side of that coin this time is that it's a bit like when I started taking choirs. I did so enthusiastically. I did the best I could, but I was also aware that I needed to get more training, and I upskilled myself, because I do think that you don't want people to go, well, I'm the enthusiastic amateur and I'm just going to go ahead and do it, without trying to train yourself to be better at that. And I feel the same about classroom music teachers. I've been at it a long time, and I'm still constantly trying to upskill myself to be better at my craft. So it's not just, oh, you used to play piano when you were in primary school, you can be a primary school music teacher. Well, actually, you could certainly start, and good on you. Let's try, but let's get some training happening. Let's make sure you've got some pedagogy. Let's build some tools in. So I'm 100% with you. Enthusiasm, energy, get in, do it, but get yourself trained, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, I think that applies to everyone. Like, none of us should stop learning. I constantly feel like I need to be learning new things, and that's certainly not a process that has a ceiling.
No.
We just need to keep getting inspired, keep working with fabulous people, and hopefully that creates a feedback loop whereby the people that we work with, reap the benefits. Yeah.
Yes, it's all about that great community. I couldn't agree more. And it's just, I come back to what I've always said to myself, and will say to anyone who will listen. So if anyone's listening, listen to me. Once you think you have finished learning, or once you think you know it all, I ask respectfully, please leave the profession, because you're done. We don't want you in it. If you really think you got nothing else to learn, go away.
Yeah.
Right. See, I can say that because I'm not saying it to anyone in particular, but you can't.
Yeah. 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 I haven't met too many people like that, thankfully.
No, I haven't met many either. No.
Yeah, but I agree. I totally agree with you. That's when, you start sort of hating what you do, I think.
Yes.
Deep down, regardless of what you kind of, purport to feel on the surface. But anyway, it's probably a conversation.
All right, that's getting a bit
time.
deep. All right, now we're getting to the end. It's wrap up time. It's been so nice to talk to you. I didn't really hear your favourite of your pieces. I wonder if you could.
Oh, look.
Is that too hard? Just come in.
No, look, I probably do have one. I really have a soft spot for a piece called You, Me and the Wide Open Sky, which again is not a complicated piece by any stretch of the imagination. It was written for the Murrumbilla Festival back in 2006, which is this extraordinary festival that happens out in Western New South Wales. It involves an enormous a group of kids from a huge catchment area, right up, Lightning Ridge, Walgett, White Cliffs, Barradine, Coonamble, Dubbo, all over the place. And I was composer in residence for a few years, and one of the most extraordinary women who was very closely involved in the festival sadly passed away from bowel cancer. And it affected, everybody that was involved in that festival. And I wrote a piece basically about, the beauty of that part of the world and the oneness that you feel when you're out there and you look up and the sky out there is just enormous. It just goes on, and the color is completely unlike the color of the sky that we get, in the cities. And so I wrote this piece, and it's a bit of a country song. It's my country song, and I kind of hope, Lee Kernaghan, if you're listening, have a bit of a listen. I don't know how you feel about doing covers, but I reckon you'd kill it. And it's had a lot of popularity. It's very Australian. There was a documentary called Wide Open Sky that was made around about the Murrumbilla Festival, and I think you can actually see that on Netflix. And that the title of that documentary was named after this song that I wrote, which was really, really exciting. So yeah, it's a bit of a win.
Oh, that is a win. Do you know what? I think that would be a great place to finish. I think with Wide Open Sky. Let's finish with Wide Open Sky and the oneness and the beauty of the earth. And I want to thank you so much for talking to me.
You're
and
so welcome, Deb.
The listeners. It was so good to catch up.
Pleasure. I'm glad I could share a few things with you.
As we know, laughter relieves stress. Don't lose sight of the funny side of life. Did you hear about the Italian chef who died? He passed away. Thank you so much for watching our Crescendo Music Education podcast. For more information about all things Crescendo, including membership and music education resources, visit us at crescendo.com.au. Don't forget to like and subscribe.